Welcome to The Forgotten Crypt, Whispers from Below. Prepare yourself for a chilling journey into the depths of horror and ancient secrets. Let's begin. In the quaint town of Millbrook, nestled in the rolling hills of New England, life had always been predictable and mundane. That is, until the day the earth opened up and revealed a secret that had been buried for centuries. It was a crisp autumn morning when construction workers, breaking ground for a new community center, stumbled upon something extraordinary. Their excavator hit what they thought was bedrock, but as they cleared away the dirt, they realized it was far more sinister. A massive stone slab, adorned with intricate carvings and ominous symbols, lay before them. Little did they know they had just uncovered the entrance to the Forgotten Crypt. News of the discovery spread like wildfire through Millbrook. The town's historian, Elizabeth, a woman in her 50s with a sharp mind and an insatiable curiosity, was immediately called to the site. As she gazed upon the ancient stone, a shiver ran down her spine. The symbols were unlike anything she had ever seen, a mix of forgotten languages and arcane glyphs that seemed to whisper dark secrets. Elizabeth knew she needed help to unravel this mystery. She reached out to her old friend and colleague, Professor James, an expert in ancient civilizations from the nearby university. James arrived within hours, his eyes wide with excitement, as he examined the stone slab. Together, they began the painstaking process of translating the cryptic inscriptions. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the excavation site, Elizabeth and James made a breakthrough. The inscriptions spoke of an ancient sect, a group that had delved into forbidden knowledge and dark rituals. The crypt, it seemed, was their final resting place, or so they thought. With trembling hands, they activated the hidden mechanism revealed by their translation. The stone slab groaned and shifted, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. The air that escaped from the opening was stale and carried a faint, sickly sweet odor that made their stomachs churn. Driven by their academic curiosity and a hint of trepidation, Elizabeth and James decided to assemble a small team for an initial exploration. They recruited Sarah, a talented young archaeologist, and Michael, a local guide known for his bravery and level-headedness. As they prepared for their descent, none of them could shake the feeling that they were about to disturb something that should have remained buried. The next morning, equipped with flashlights, cameras, and protective gear, the team stood at the entrance of the crypt. The autumn sun seemed to lose its warmth as they gazed into the abyss below. With a deep breath, Elizabeth took the first step, and the others followed suit. The staircase seemed to go on forever, spiraling deeper into the earth. The air grew colder with each step, and the walls were slick with moisture. Strange symbols similar to those on the entrance slab lined the walls, seeming to writhe in the flickering beams of their flashlights. Finally, they reached the bottom, emerging into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The room was circular, with a high-domed ceiling supported by intricately carved pillars. In the center stood a massive stone altar, its surface stained with what looked disturbingly like ancient bloodstains. As they moved further into the chamber, their flashlights revealed rows upon rows of stone sarcophagi lining the walls. Each bore the effigy of its occupant, their faces frozen in expressions of agony or ecstasy. It was hard to tell which. The air was thick with dust and the lingering scent of decay. Sarah, her voice barely above a whisper, pointed out strange markings on the floor. They formed concentric circles around the central altar, inscribed with more of the mysterious symbols they had seen above. James knelt to examine them closer, his brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the chamber, despite there being no apparent source. The flashlights flickered, and for a moment, the team was plunged into total darkness. When the lights came back on, Elizabeth let out a gasp. One of the sarcophagi, previously sealed shut, now stood open. Heart pounding, Michael approached the open sarcophagus, peering inside with his flashlight. To everyone's shock, it was empty. No remains, no artifacts, just a layer of dust at the bottom. As they exchanged worried glances, a low guttural moan echoed through the chamber. Panic began to set in as the team realized they were no longer alone in the crypt. Shadows seemed to move at the edge of their vision, always disappearing when they turned to look. The temperature dropped dramatically, their breath now visible in the cold, stagnant air. James, trying to maintain his scientific composure, suggested they split up to cover more ground and document their findings. Elizabeth and Sarah reluctantly agreed, while Michael vehemently opposed the idea. In the end, they decided to stay in pairs, Elizabeth with James and Sarah with Michael. As Elizabeth and James examined the altar, they noticed a hidden compartment. Inside, they found a leather-bound journal, its pages yellow with age. As James carefully opened it, a slip of paper fell out, a photograph impossibly preserved, showing a group of people standing in this very chamber. The shocking part: the photo was dated 1920, yet the crypt had supposedly been sealed for centuries. Meanwhile, Sarah and Michael were investigating the sarcophagi when Sarah noticed something odd. The effigy's eyes, which she could have sworn were closed earlier, were now open, seeming to follow their movements. She nudged Michael, pointing this out, but as they looked closer, the eyes appeared closed again. They dismissed it as a trick of the light, but an uneasy feeling settled in their stomachs. As they regrouped to share their findings, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the chamber. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The fee. Ground began to tremble, and dust rained down from the ceiling. In their panic, they realized Michael was missing. Calling out his name, they searched frantically, their flashlights cutting through the thickening darkness. They found him standing motionless in front of one of the sarcophagi, his eyes wide and unfocused. When Elizabeth touched his shoulder, he turned slowly, his face pale as death. In a voice that didn't sound entirely his own, he whispered, "They're awake." Before they could question him, the lid of the sarcophagus behind Michael began to move. Slowly, inexorably, it slid open. The team watched in horror as a withered hand, skin like ancient parchment, gripped the edge of the stone coffin. They ran. Stumbling through the darkness, they made for the staircase, the sound of scraping stone and inhuman groans following close behind. As they ascended, Elizabeth realized James wasn't with them. She turned back, only to see him at the bottom of the stairs, a strange gleam in his eyes. "We can't leave," he said, his voice eerily calm. "We've only just scratched the surface." Torn between saving herself and helping her friend, Elizabeth hesitated. In that moment, a skeletal figure emerged from the shadows behind James, its hollow, eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. With a strangled cry, Elizabeth turned and ran up the stairs, James's screams echoing behind her. Bursting into the sunlight, Elizabeth, Sarah, and Michael collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. The construction workers, alarmed by their state, quickly sealed the entrance with heavy machinery. As they sat there trying to process what had happened, Michael began to laugh hysterically. When he finally calmed down, he turned to the others. Han said, "You don't understand, we didn't just find them. We woke them up." In the days that followed, strange occurrences plagued Millbrook. Residents reported hearing whispers in the night, seeing shadowy figures at the edge of town. Animals went missing, only to be found days later, drained of blood and arranged in bizarre ritualistic patterns. Elizabeth threw herself into researching the crypt and the sect that had created it. The journal they had found provided some answers, but raised even more questions. It spoke of a group that had discovered the secret to immortality, but at a terrible cost. They had bound their souls to the crypt, needing to feed on the living to maintain their unnatural existence. As she delved deeper into the journal, Elizabeth began to change. She became obsessed, barely eating or sleeping. Sarah and Michael worried for her, but their own experiences in the crypt had left them changed as well. Michael had frequent nightmares, often waking up screaming about the voices in the walls. Sarah found herself drawn to the excavation site, standing for hours staring at the sealed entrance. The town council, urged by concerned citizens, decided to permanently seal the crypt. But as the workers approached the site, they found Elizabeth there, wild-eyed and disheveled. She ranted about the knowledge hidden below, insisting that they couldn't seal away such power. It took several men to restrain her and take her away. That night, as a storm raged over Millbrook, the power went out across town. In the darkness, residents heard a sound that chilled them to the bone, the grinding of stone against stone coming from the direction of the crypt. By the time the authorities arrived, it was too late. The entrance was open, and there was no sign of the heavy machinery that had been used to seal it. A team was sent to investigate, led by Sarah and Michael, who insisted on going despite their fear. As they descended the stairs, they found the chamber changed. The sarcophagi were all open, empty. The altar was stained with fresh blood, and there, in the center of the room, stood Elizabeth. But it wasn't Elizabeth, not really. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and when she spoke, it was with the voices of many. "We have awakened," she said, her words echoing in the cavernous space. "And we are hungry." The team tried to retreat, but shadowy figures emerged from every corner, their skeletal hands reaching out. Sarah and Michael fought their way up the stairs, sealing the entrance behind them. But they knew it was only a temporary measure. Whatever had been sleeping in the crypt was now awake, and it was only a matter of time before it broke free. As news of the incident spread, Millbrook became a ghost town. Those who could, fled. Those who couldn't lived in constant fear, boarding up their windows and doors at night. The military was called in, establishing a perimeter around the town, but reports of missing persons and strange sightings continued to pour in from the surrounding areas. Sarah and Michael, haunted by their experiences, dedicated themselves to finding a way to stop whatever had been unleashed. They traveled the world, seeking out experts in the occult and ancient religions. They learned of other crypts, other sects that had tapped into similar dark powers. It seemed that what they had discovered in Millbrook was just the tip of a very large, very dangerous iceberg. Years passed, and the world largely forgot about the incident in Millbrook. It became an urban legend, a scary story told around campfires. But for those who knew the truth, the nightmare never ended. They lived with the knowledge that somewhere in the depths of the earth, an ancient evil was growing stronger, waiting for the right moment to emerge and reclaim the world of the living. And in the forgotten crypt beneath Millbrook, Elizabeth, or what was left of her, sat on the altar surrounded by her new family. She smiled, revealing teeth that had grown sharp and predatory. "Soon," she whispered, her voice a symphony of the damned. "Soon we will rise." The once quiet town of Millbrook had become the epicenter of a horror beyond imagination, a gateway to a darkness that threatened to engulf the world. And it all began with the discovery of a single stone slab, proof that some secrets are better left buried, and some doors should never be opened. As Sarah and Michael continued their quest for answers, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The whispers from below were growing louder, and the shadows were getting longer. The forgotten crypt had remembered its purpose, and its inhabitants were preparing to reclaim their place in the world above. The story of the forgotten crypt was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Thank you for joining us for the Forgotten Crypt Whispers from Below. Remember, some doors are meant to stay closed and some secrets are better left buried. Sleep tight and don't let the whispers keep you up at night.